Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports. Welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. On today's show, I'm going to give you 5 of my favorite waiver wire pickups for week 2 of the fantasy football season. Week 1 is in the books. We had a lot of movement when it comes to injuries, some players moving up the depth chart, some players getting more playing time than expected. So I'm going to give you 5 players I think can help your teams moving forward. And I'm going to start with Isaiah Likely of Baltimore. I think he will be the top pickup this week. He is owned in just 37.6% of leagues on our site. So he's available in almost 2/3 of leagues on our site. He had a huge week in week 1. He had 111 yards, 9 receptions, and a touchdown. Outplayed Mark Andrews, the starter on the offense for Baltimore. He had 12 targets as well. I'm not sure Likely's going to do this every week. I think Andrews had to block more because of the offensive line issues in Baltimore. So I think that kind of played a part in Likely getting more targets. So I'm not sure this is going to be the norm for Likely every week. Regardless, I still think he's going to have a good season. He's going to be used a lot, but I'm not sleeping on Andrews just yet. I still think he's going to produce in this offense, but Likely's going to be a great pickup. And I think he could be a low end number 1 fantasy tight end much of the season. My next pickup is another Baltimore Raven, and that's Justice Hill. He's owned in on just 24.7% of leagues on our site. He's not going to get the early down work over Derrick Henry. He's clearly the top pass catching back on this roster, and he played a ton in week 1. He actually had more playing time than Derrick Hill in week 1. He was on the field more than Derrick Henry in week 1, excuse me. He scored 11.5 fantasy points. He had 6 receptions for 52 yards on 8 targets. So that gives him a good weekly floor because of his receiving potential. He's going to play a lot in this offense. Could end up being almost a 50-50 split depending on how the game flow is going for Baltimore. So I think Hill's going to have a role this year. Could end up being a pretty good flex play on a weekly basis because of that pass catching ability. My next pickup is a guy that's going to be getting more playing time because of injury, and that's Tyler Johnson of the Rams. He's on just 0.1% of rosters on our site, so he's owned on just a handful of rosters on RealTime Fantasy Sports, but he's going to be playing more because Puka Nacua has a knee injury. He's going to be out at least the next 4 games, placed on injured reserve. And Johnson was the biggest benefactor of that injury last week. He looked to play that Nacua role in the offense. He had 5 catches on 7 targets, 79 yards on the day. He looked pretty good in that role, made some plays after the catch. This offense is very good. Maybe Johnson's going to be a good fit. I'm not sure he's going to produce Nacua numbers every week. I actually think Cooper Kupp could end up getting more targets because of this injury. But regardless, I think Johnson could be a factor and be worth some spot plays going forward. All right, my next pickup on the list for week 2 is Alexander Madison of the Las Vegas Raiders. So he is owned on 30.6% of leagues on our site. He actually played 60% of the snaps last week compared to 38% for Zamir White. Everybody thought White was going to be the clear starter in Las Vegas. Madison played more. He played better as well, ran 5 times for just 19 yards, not very good, but he had 4 catches for 43 yards and a touchdown, made some plays in the passing game. He was targeted 6 times in that game as well. I think he's set up for a pretty decent workload. I don't know if it's going to be a situation where Madison gets more snaps every week over White, but it looks to be at least a 50-50 split, and Madison could end up emerging as the top back. White didn't do much with his chances last week, so I think Madison's at least owning in all formats. I'm not sure you throw him in your starting lineup just yet, but he could be a factor in this offense. My last pickup is actually a guy that's on a lot of rosters, but I think after this week he won't be on any. He won't be available anymore in leagues, and that's Baker Mayfield. He's owned on roughly 71% of leagues on our site, so he's available in about 29% of leagues, and I think it's going to be the last week you can grab him. He looked great last week. I think we may have undervalued him come draft day this year. He had a breakout season last year. I think he was possibly overlooked this year. Looked great in week 1. 4 touchdowns, 289 passing yards, didn't have a turnover. They have great options to work with at the receiver position. They like to throw the ball. The loss of the offensive coordinator is a concern, but didn't seem to slow them down last week in Tampa Bay. And Mayfield looked great. I think he could end up being a low-end number 1 fantasy quarterback much of the year. If you want to go the platoon route, he's a guy I would consider picking up if he's available in your league and platooning him with another option. All right, those are 5 of my favorite waiver wire pickups for week 2 of the fantasy season. Good luck navigating those waiver wires. I hope you have a lot of success this week, and I appreciate you watching the Real Time Fantasy Sports Show. This has been Jeff Paur. Have a great day.